Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA. I'm KISMA, and this is episode 2 in the series of the Getting Unstuck series. Today, we're talking about the mental stuck, what to do about it, and how to get out of it. Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set.
Hello there, Nick.
Hey there, KISMA.
What's going on in your not stuck world?
I can smell downstairs the sweet potato and quinoa chili.
Yum.
And the vegan cornbread.
It is going to be a beautiful dinner tonight.
It is. Yeah, I can smell it. And it's like, ooh, that smells ready.
So good. Yeah,
so that's what's going on.
It's been a couple of months since we moved house and moved our podcasting studio out of the common grounds and put it up here in your upstairs office.
Very happy with this.
And I feel like it's really working out well.
Are the wires freaking you out? I feel like I toned them down.
You toned them down. I was looking at it earlier. I'm like, this looks better.
Yeah.
It looks better. When I stand up, I'm going to push that cluster of wires off the back of the table, but it looks good. We've got some awesome mics. You've got your big monitor. It's very fancy.
It's very fancy.
All these dials.
All the dials. Oh, I'll tell you.
Pro FX.
What that's for. Yeah, that's a Mackie
and then
mixer.
There's some red thing over there.
I love
flashing.
that mixer, and that is for the sound healing.
Oh, the sound healing, right.
I'm really pleased. So yesterday I was teaching an energy mastery class.
Mm-hmm.
And there's parts in it where we just have them do the healing processes. Like we teach these really cool healing processes, and then we walk the students through it step by step by step. And oftentimes I'll throw on a little bit of background music. And yesterday I threw on my bowls, like the recording that I just made for Beth's for a chamber music concert. And then I had a few of the other recordings that I listened to, and I'll be darned, I really couldn't tell the difference.
Wow. Look at you go.
I was like, wow, that is actually a professional sounding recording.
Yeah,
so I was really pretty pleased. There's room for improvement, I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's really coming along. It's been a project I've worked for a while. And what's even cooler is I finally figured out how to use the software that I have to get it to broadcast out. So people and keep the sound quality intact. So not only do I have a really cool recording on my website, I'll be doing some. I do.
NickHansiger.com.
Yes. Ooh, is it up? Is it up there? Up there? I will put it up there.
Yeah, you will put it.
I will put it up there.
Well, why don't we put a link on our show notes? Illuminationpodcast.com.
We'll include one there for sure, and there'll also be one on nickhansinger.com. But it's called the Mystic Chamber. It's a 12-minute
little Mystic Chamber.
Yeah, because it was for chamber music.
Right. Yeah, but it sounds more Harry Potterish.
Well, that's exactly what I thought about too. Is like, ooh, like what happens there? And it is kind of it's got this mystical quality to it. It's about 12 minutes long, but I set it up so that you could play it on repeat. So it's a 12-minute reset. And if you just pop that in your ears, you will zen out, and start breathing, and you'll have 12 minutes of happy zone. And then you let it repeat, and you can do like deeper stuff with it.
I think we will circle back to this in the Getting Unstuck in all ways. This will be one of the steps.
Well, it's funny because we're talking about mental stuckness. Okay. So when it comes to, I know tech okay, but I'm not like a techie type of person.
You're more techie than you realize.
Probably more geeky maybe than I realize. But
this is true.
But when it comes to all those little things and all the little boxes to check and the ways that the audio gets routed through a mic, through a board into the computer and back out to somewhere else, like there's all these little things. And it was a process for me. And I'll tell you, I got stuck in my head on this.
Yeah, I know.
More than a couple times.
And then it stuck your energy, which we'll talk about next week.
Oh, really?
Well, when you get stuck in your head, then your energy gets stuck.
I got stuck around the project. Yeah. I guess.
Say yes,
probably.
KISMA.
Okay. I'm curious. Now I'm like, well, what did she notice?
Let's talk about that. So mental stuck, what does that feel like?
Well, that's a great example.
How do we know when we're mentally stuck?
That's a great example because it's like I had this idea of this thing that I wanted to do and I just couldn't figure out how to do it, right? How to accomplish it. And so when I would sit down to do it, then you'd get lost down the rabbit holes. So that's
a little into that need to be right. It's this way, not the other way.
I'm sure the need to be right was present. And that is a telltale sign.
I mean, you kind of dig your heels in. It's right here. I'm going to do it this way. And sometimes don't see other possibilities.
Well, that's funny. Yeah. Like answers revealed to me along the way. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. The need to be right is definitely
need to be
present.
Right.
That's always present in mental stuckness.
In mental stuckness.
Yeah.
One of the ways you know you've got the mental stuckness is if you're digging your heels in people and you got to be right.
Yeah. Oh, we talked about the frustration. Like it's very frustrating. Yeah.
And when we have the need to be right, we're going to miss some things. We're going to miss solutions. We're going to miss freedom. We're going to miss momentum because we've got to be right. And we only see it this way. And it's really stuck.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the magic of that because I can't tell you how many times I Googled the same thing to try to come up with different, tutorials or videos or solutions to help me like know which things to check. And it just didn't show up.
Yeah.
And then one day it showed up. And I was like, oh, that. And then I did the thing and I was like, oh, and then I started to tweak it and it really started to work. But that need to be right it expresses in a lot of different ways. So if we just said, well, you have the need to be right, like that's even more frustrating because you're like, well, what? I don't, no, I don't. And so I think it's helpful to talk about some of the ways that expresses.
Well, what will happen in the mental stuckness is we humans will create an assumption, which then turns into just this mental story. In a mental story, you're spinning a mental story, and a lot of times you're assuming something that you're not even sure is true, or you're in a situation you can only see one aspect. Your perception of the situation spins and spins in a certain way, and it goes more and more. So it's gaining life, right? That mental story is gaining life. It's gaining energy. And then you've got a mental movie that is playing in your head again and again. So you can't see any other way. The perception is stuck.
I'm just kind of reflecting on that, like taking it through. So the assumption
we assume something.
It starts the story and then the story makes the whole, the whole drama of it, like the whole movie.
The whole movie assumption, or let's say there is something, there's something going on. You're absolutely sure this isn't what I want. Here's the occurrence. We can look at the pandemic on a larger scale. We can look at certain things. If our perception will only allow us to see one way, we'll get stuck in that. And then we will start to create more stories around it and more mental movies around it. And before you know it, it's a spin and a spin. And this is a huge prosperity disruptor because people in this they have to understand how, but it seems impossible to move into prosperous thought. Whereas when we look at the law of polarity, if we're in a negative thought flow, a negative mental movie, the exact opposite occurs, a really positive and prosperous mental movie. But we've got to be willing to get to that other side.
That law of polarity coming into play. That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a really big one. Yeah. Now this is just to circle back to this. I'm kind of like, now I'm in it for myself and I'm kind of like going through my process around this. It's very instructive. I had the assumption that this was totally possible.
Yeah, that's true. You did.
I started with that assumption that it's totally possible. But I think where I really dug myself into it was I can't figure it out. I think that was the story I started telling myself is I just can't figure this out.
Yeah. That's a mental stuckness.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't figure it out. When you say that or think it, you can feel your whole being's like shrinks.
Right.
It's a very constrictive thing. The other place where the mental stuckness will show up is in relationships, whether it's a partner or spouse, whether it's someone you work with, whether it's a friend. When you get stuck on a thought about them, when you get mentally stuck in the way the relationship is and you can't see it any other way, there's a mental stuckness, which will then bring in an emotional stuckness in the relationship.
Right. Yeah. It's really cool that you bring that one up because it's so prevalent with the assumptions. Somebody says something a certain way. Doesn't matter if it's your partner or somebody at work or whoever. They say something a certain way and we decide how they meant that for them.
Right.
That's the assumption that happened. And then the story builds around that, right?
Yeah.
Before you know it, you're having an argument in your head and you're what are you doing? Well, you're defending your position, right? Those are all, that's all stuck kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Defensive, need to be right.
Right. Nothing's really, and nothing is really getting solved there.
Now, here's the thing. Let's say in a situation, in a relationship or something, this thing that you're observing, this situation or this person you're observing is not the ideal situation. You want it to change. The challenge is, as you all know, if you've been listening to us, what we are thinking and the feelings that are impressed upon those thoughts create a really strong vibrancy. And that has a force of power. And it goes out and brings back in other like situations, events to further percolate this whole manifestation process. So not only are you mentally stuck, but if you're mentally stuck on something that you don't want, you're sending out the frequency, just like radar, to bring in more. And it just proves the whole stuckness right.
The self-fulfilling prophecy.
It becomes this cauldron of like stuckness.
Cauldron. I love that. I haven't
the cauldron
heard that word used like that in quite a while.
I don't think anyone's used
a cauldron. But yeah, it's like a feedback loop, where it's just like, that's what we're really focused on. That's what we're feeding into. It's making more of that. And then the confirmation bias says, well, if I'm seeing that here, like that's exactly what I expect to see everywhere else. And then that's exactly what you see everywhere else. And it just plays out again and again and again. Yeah. That's mental stuckness.
It's mental stuckness and creating further in your reality.
Here's one of the subtleties about mental stuckness though, that a lot of people don't think about is it's not still.
Oh, no, we're never still.
We're never still. That's a whole other conversation. But it doesn't seem quite so stuck because in your head, there's a lot of activity.
You're spinning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can be like, no, I'm not stuck. There's all these voices in my head. There's all these thoughts. They might even be creative thoughts you're trying to, but boy, it's noisy.
Yeah. I had a lot of thoughts about this whole thing.
I know you did. You talked about it incessongly. Not really. I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, I try to keep it to myself because you'll just glaze over anyway. Like, oh yeah, I'm like using this different audio driver and trying to figure out this thing.
It's rough.
Anyway. But yeah, it doesn't feel like the same kind of stuck in that it does maybe if you're looking at a situation or the result that you want and it's not moving because there's so much activity in the head around it, whether it's an argument about somebody else or whether it's just like another failure, another thing that you tried that didn't work that just like, or whatever. Right. It's like you're thinking and then all the ideas and maybe it's this and maybe it's that.
Right. Okay. So the way we know we're in mental stuckness, it's cause and effect. The effects in your life continue to be the same. What you're manifesting, what you're creating, the effects in your life, the results in your life continue to be the same. It's like this karmic loop, karmic loop, karmic loop. We have got to, let's move into the part where we give you some solutions to get unstuck mentally. Because when you get unstuck mentally and you begin to think and send out thoughts with a different frequency, a different emotion, you're going to bring back something different. You will. It's the science. It's the law. So number one, the part of the way out is just, okay, I think there's something going on here. I'm spinning. I'm stuck. I see the pattern of my thoughts. I notice the pattern of my words coming after the thoughts. right? So you've got to acknowledge it and be willing, have this willingness to change it. I am a really big fan of inserting prosperity commands, affirmations in the right way. What I mean by that, if they've got to be divinely guided, because then they're true. If they're just like, you're just trying to tell yourself you're awesome, you won't believe it. But invoking something of higher, because you're always thinking, right? You're always thinking. So we've got to start to infiltrate and kind of provide like a different pulse or rhythm or tone as the foundation of your thoughts.
I'm just taking it in.
Okay,
like
cool.
I was like, dang, like where was this advice when I was?
As if you would have listened.
As if I would have listened. Yeah, that's the truth of the matter. Yeah, I was not in a listening kind of place.
Yeah. So let's say there's a stuckness around money. One of my favorite prosperity commands is by Dr. Catherine Ponder, which is everything and everyone prospers me now, and I prosper everything and everyone. It is so complete because it's about cause and effect. Everyone's prospering you and you're prospering them. Say that all day long if you have to. Everything and everyone prospers me now, and I prosper everything and everyone. You will notice, if you really commit to this, you're going to notice that things start to change. Like there's a different vibe coming through your brain. There's a different vibe going from your conscious mind to your subconscious mind. There's a different energy that you're putting out into the universal substance. If you're stuck around a person, it's doing your best to see, where's that part that I love in that person? Where can I pay attention to that? And put your mental energy, your notice, and your appreciation on that. It will begin to grow.
That's a big, big deal.
It's a big deal, everyone. Same thing, even in a relationship, maybe somebody that works for you or with you. Notice, Swami G is so great about this at the Academy. He notices right away what people's skills and talents are, where they shine. And then he gives them work to do that. He sees it. So you've got to see, because that builds confidence in you that you're seeing what is working in them, and it builds confidence in them because they will feel you seeing it.
Right. And it just, if you don't do that, it really just sets up conflict and argument.
Yeah.
Right. And that's more stuck.
Right.
Because nobody likes to, even if you don't ever say it.
It's not ascending, right? It's not ascending. Conflict and argument is just going to keep you where you are or descend.
Right. Right. And expend a whole lot of energy in not a productive way in the meantime. But it really gets into that. Like nobody, even if you don't ever say it, right? That idea of just that kind of inner contempt or frustration or something with somebody else, like that does not promote the communication between two people. And I'll tell you, like human beings are very unpredictable and when we're kind of weird and idiosyncratic. And it is not hard to find things to criticize with people. It's just not hard to do.
It's not hard. And when you get into that pattern, it really is a stuckness in and of itself. Yeah. And it's rough.
And to me, I think about it as just being lazy, right? Like if that's all you can see in a person is the negative stuff, you're just being lazy.
Yeah.
Because it's not hard to do that, but you may have to actually apply a little mental effort to find those wonderful qualities and then even a little bit more skill and elegance to help to draw those out.
Right.
Like that's where you really become much more masterful.
Absolutely. And then in just a general mental stuckness, if you're spinning, if you're in that, nothing is working, I can't believe it, look at this, it's all wrong. You're going to have to do something a little bit more proactive. And what I like to do is wake up and start my day with an intention and a choice of attitude. And it's whatever you have to do it. But it's like, this is the choice of attitude I'm going to have today. Write it down. I'm an energetic match for joy. I'm an energetic match for positivity. I'm an energetic match for compassion. Whatever it is, write it down and set that intention. Remind yourself, this is the intention I set. And it's don't bring in the world until you do it and commit to it. And then when you start to notice, because you will feel different when you go into the lower vibe stuck, remind yourself, wait a minute, my intention today was to have joy. This other stuff, we're not doing that. Like you actually have to talk to those lower vibe, I call it the false self. You got to talk to and say, we're not doing that now. I'm choosing something different. I'm choosing something different. And then you go into a prosperity command. One for just general stuckness can be, divine intelligence, free my mind from negativity and infuse me with positivity. Thank you. Thank you. Divine
Simple.
intelligence. Yeah. And free my mind from negativity and infuse my mind with positivity.
Yeah. Well, one of the big things that I'm taking away from this is that you can't think your way out of mental stuckness, right? You'll just spin the wheels. So the solutions that you're giving are actually really, really simple, and less is more.
Less is more.
Right.
Less is more with a higher frequency.
Right.
When you listen to next week's episode on the energy, it's also going to apply to this and last week's episode too.
Right.
Because we'll give you some energetic tools that'll make it all so much easier.
Yeah, they really all tie together. The energy and the mind, you always have to be dealing with both of those things to really create a full solution for yourself. And ultimately the energy is all a matter of your decisions, right? So being in the in-between is that's really where the journey starts. Right. So yeah, that's really helpful. I'm going to probably have to go back and listen to this episode.
Yeah, it's a great episode. Look, everyone, we're so thrilled you're here. Thank you for listening to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA. Do us a favor, download from iTunes, give us a rating, review, share it with someone. Let's spread the word. And, here we are in an interesting time and we don't have to be stuck. We really don't. We can just flourish and thrive. And when we have each other to do so, it's so much easier.
Namaste.
Peace. Thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.